The shrill wheeze broke through the evening calm of the city park, catching Zane Quinn's attention immediately. He spun around, his eyes locking on a woman doubled over on a bench, struggling for breath, her hand clutching desperately at her throat. Without hesitation, he grabbed his 6-year-old daughter's hand and rushed toward the stranger in distress. "Emma, stay right here," Zane instructed his daughter firmly, but gently, setting down the grocery bags they'd been carrying home from their budget shopping trip. The little girl nodded solemnly, her wide eyes fixed on the woman who seemed unable to breathe. Zane knelt before the woman, whose face was growing alarmingly pale. "Madam, are you having an asthma attack?" he asked urgently, noticing how she was gasping for air. The woman nodded frantically, her honey-brown eyes wide with panic. She gestured weakly to her handbag, which had fallen to the ground. "Inhaler?" Zane asked, already reaching for the expensive-looking leather bag. She nodded again, her perfectly manicured hand trembling as she tried to help him search. Zane dumped the contents carefully onto the bench beside her, noting absently the high-end makeup, a sleek electronic planner, and what looked like business cards spilling out. He found the inhaler immediately and handed it to her. She took it with shaking hands, but her coordination was off. Zane gently steadied her wrist and helped guide the inhaler to her mouth. "One puff, hold it." "That's it," he coached, his voice calm despite the rush of adrenaline. After 2 puffs, the woman's breathing began to ease, though she remained pale and trembling. "Should I call an ambulance?" Zane asked, his hand already reaching for his phone, an old model with a cracked screen. The woman shook her head, finally able to speak. "No, thank you." "I'll be okay now," she managed between still labored breaths. "I haven't had an attack this bad in years." Emma had inched closer, her small face serious with concern. "My daddy saves people all the time," she announced proudly. "He's a hero." The woman's lips curved into a smile as her breathing normalized. "I can see that," she said, her voice still raspy but stronger. "Thank you, truly. I'm Gabrielle Morgan." "Zane Quinn," he replied, helping her gather her belongings back into her bag. "And this is Emma, my daughter." "Hi, Emma," Gabrielle said, her smile warming as she looked at the little girl. "Your daddy really is a hero." Zane felt heat rise to his cheeks. At 32, with the weight of single parenthood and financial struggles constantly on his shoulders, it had been a long time since he'd blushed. "Anyone would have done the same," he said, noticing for the first time how striking Gabrielle was even disheveled from her attack. Her elegant features and warm eyes were captivating. "Not true," Gabrielle insisted, her breathing almost back to normal. "Most people would have walked by or just called 911 and kept going." She glanced down at her watch, a slim, undoubtedly expensive timepiece. "I've kept you both long enough. You must have places to be." "Just home," Zane said, gesturing to their modest grocery bags. "Thursday night is spaghetti night." Emma bounced on her heels. "With meatballs. Daddy makes the best meatballs." Gabrielle smiled again, and Zane couldn't help noticing how it transformed her face, softening the professional edge he'd glimpsed even through her distress. She was probably in her late 20s or early 30s, dressed in a tailored pantsuit that screamed success. "Well, I won't keep you from meatball night," she said. "But please, let me thank you properly. Perhaps I could buy you both dinner sometime." Before Zane could formulate a response, his pride wrestling with the genuine warmth in her invitation, Emma chimed in. "We're free tomorrow, right, Daddy?" Zane hesitated. Between his job as a construction foreman and raising Emma alone since his wife's death 3 years ago, his social life was non-existent. The last thing he needed was to get tangled up with someone who clearly moved in different circles. But the hopefulness in Emma's eyes and something indefinable in Gabrielle's gaze made him nod. "Tomorrow works," he said, surprised at his own response. "But nothing fancy. We're simple folks." Gabrielle's smile widened as she pulled out her phone, the latest model. He noted, and they exchanged numbers. "Simple sounds perfect," she said. "I'll text you about the time." As they parted ways, Zane couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened. He hoisted their grocery bags, took Emma's hand, and continued their walk home to their small apartment, trying to ignore the way his heart had quickened when Gabrielle smiled. The next evening, Zane stood before his bathroom mirror, scrutinizing his reflection. He'd trimmed his beard, put on his least worn jeans, and a blue button-down shirt that Emma had once said made his eyes look like the sky. His daughter sat on the closed toilet lid, swinging her legs and chattering excitedly. "Is Gabrielle your girlfriend now, Daddy?" she asked, not for the first time. Zane chuckled, ruffling her dark curls. "No, Pumpkin, she's just someone who wants to say thank you for helping her yesterday." "But she's pretty," Emma persisted, "and you look at her like you used to look at Mommy in the pictures." Zane's hands stilled. Sometimes Emma's perceptiveness caught him off guard. "She is pretty," he acknowledged carefully. "But grown-up relationships are complicated. Now, are you ready? We need to leave in 5 minutes." They met Gabrielle at a casual Italian restaurant, not the cheapest place in town, but nowhere near as upscale as Zane had feared she might choose. She was waiting outside, dressed down in jeans and a simple blouse, her hair loose around her shoulders instead of in yesterday's sleek updo. "You clean up nice," she said by way of greeting, her eyes taking in Zane's appearance with obvious appreciation. "So do you," he replied, surprised to find himself relaxing. "Though you looked pretty good even while having an asthma attack." Gabrielle laughed, a warm, genuine sound that made several heads turn. "That might be the strangest compliment I've ever received." Emma tugged at Gabrielle's hand. "Do you have asthma like my friend Lily? She has a special machine at home." As they were seated, Gabrielle answered Emma's questions about her asthma with patient detail, explaining how she usually managed it well, but sometimes, like yesterday, stress and unexpected factors could trigger an attack. "What were you doing in the park anyway?" Zane asked as they ordered. "If you don't mind me asking." Something flickered across Gabrielle's face. "Taking a shortcut, actually. I had a difficult meeting nearby and wanted some air before heading back to the office." Their conversation flowed easily through dinner, surprisingly so. Gabrielle asked questions about Emma's school and activities, genuinely interested in the 6-year-old's animated responses. When she learned that Zane worked in construction, she didn't show the dismissive response he'd half expected. "My father was in construction," she said, twirling pasta around her fork. "Started as a laborer and worked his way up. He always said it was honest work that built the world." "It pays the bills," Zane said simply. "And I get to see tangible results at the end of the day. What about you?" "What do you do?" A shadow passed over Gabrielle's face so quickly he almost missed it. "I'm in corporate management," she said vaguely. "Lots of meetings, spreadsheets, people problems, nothing as concrete as what you do." As the evening progressed, Zane found himself increasingly drawn to Gabrielle. There was something refreshing about her, despite the hints of an affluent lifestyle. She listened intently to his stories about job site mishaps and Emma's school adventures, laughing in all the right places and offering thoughtful responses. When the check came, Zane reached for it, but Gabrielle was faster. "This was my thank you dinner, remember?" she said firmly. "At least let me leave the tip," he countered. She considered him for a moment, then nodded. "Deal." Outside the restaurant, there was an awkward moment as they prepared to part ways. Emma, tired from the excitement and a full meal, leaned against Zane's leg. "I had a really nice time," Gabrielle said softly. "Both of you are special." "We're pretty ordinary," Zane replied with a small smile. "But thanks for dinner. It was great to talk to someone over the age of 6 for a change." "Hey," Emma protested sleepily, making them both laugh. Gabrielle hesitated, then said, "I'd like to see you again, both of you." The request caught Zane off guard. Women like Gabrielle didn't typically look twice at single dads living paycheck to paycheck. "I'd like that too," he admitted, surprising himself with his honesty. "But I should warn you, my life's pretty packed between work and Emma." "I understand busy," she said. "But I'm willing to work with your schedule if you are." They agreed to meet that Sunday for an afternoon at the zoo, Emma's excited suggestion that neither adult could refuse. As Zane tucked Emma into bed later that night, she asked drowsily, "Is Gabrielle going to be our friend now?" Zane smoothed her hair back from her forehead. "I think so, Pumpkin. Would you like that?" "Uh-huh," Emma mumbled, already drifting off. "She smells nice and she listens really good." Lying in his own bed later, Zane found himself unable to sleep. Gabrielle was undeniably attractive, intelligent, and kind qualities he hadn't allowed himself to notice in a woman since losing Emma's mother. But there was something else about her, something she seemed to be holding back. And the practical side of him couldn't ignore the obvious differences in their lives. The watch she wore probably cost more than his monthly rent. Her corporate management job likely paid more in a week than he made in a month. Still, he couldn't deny the connection he'd felt, or the way her laugh had awakened something long dormant inside him. Sunday arrived with perfect weather, and an unusually excited Emma, who had changed her outfit 3 times before settling on her favorite polka dot dress. "You really like Gabrielle, don't you?" Zane observed as he helped her with her shoes. Emma nodded vigorously. "She's nice and pretty, and she doesn't talk to me like I'm a baby." "Those are good reasons," Zane agreed, realizing that his daughter's assessment was spot on. Gabrielle met them at the zoo entrance, casual in shorts and a t-shirt, looking younger and more carefree than she had before. She'd brought a backpack with snacks, extra sunscreen, and even a small stuffed elephant that she presented to Emma. "I heard the elephant exhibit is amazing here," she explained as Emma hugged the toy in delight. The day unfolded in a series of magical moments. Emma's excitement at each animal was contagious, and Zane found himself enjoying the zoo more than he had in years. Gabrielle seemed to know surprising facts about many of the animals, entertaining Emma with stories about elephant memory and giraffe sleeping habits. During a quiet moment, while Emma was engrossed in the penguin exhibit, Gabrielle leaned against the railing beside Zane. "She's an amazing kid," she said softly. "You've done a wonderful job with her." "She makes it easy," Zane replied, though the compliment warmed him. "Her mother would be proud of who she's becoming." Gabrielle's eyes softened. "Emma mentioned her mom was in heaven. I'm sorry for your loss." "It's been 3 years," Zane said, watching his daughter press her hands against the glass as a penguin swam by. "Cancer. Emma was only 3, but she remembers her." "That must have been incredibly difficult," Zane nodded, appreciating that she didn't offer empty platitudes. "It was. Still is sometimes, but we found our rhythm." When Emma ran back to them, bubbling with penguin facts, the moment passed. But throughout the afternoon, Zane caught Gabrielle watching him with a thoughtful expression that made his pulse quicken. As the day wound down, Emma's energy finally flagged, and she fell asleep against Zane's shoulder as they walked toward the exit. "She's completely wiped out," Gabrielle observed with a smile. "Mission accomplished." "Thanks for today," Zane said quietly, shifting Emma's weight. "She hasn't had this much fun in a long time." Gabrielle hesitated, then reached out to brush a strand of hair from Emma's cheek. "Neither have I, actually," she admitted. "My life doesn't include many zoo days." "Too busy with all those corporate meetings?" Zane asked lightly. Something flickered in her eyes. Something like that. At his car, Zane carefully settled Emma into her booster seat, then turned to Gabrielle. "I'd invite you over for dinner, but I think she's done for the day." "Another time," Gabrielle said, and there was a question in her voice. "Definitely," Zane confirmed, feeling suddenly bold. "But next time I'm cooking." Her smile was radiant. "I'd like that." Before he could second-guess himself, Zane leaned forward and brushed his lips against her cheek. "Thank you for today," he said softly. Gabrielle's eyes widened slightly, and for a moment he thought he'd overstepped. Then she rose on her tiptoes and returned the gesture, her lips warm against his stubbled cheek. "Until next time," she whispered. Over the next few weeks, Gabrielle became a regular part of their lives. She joined them for spaghetti night. brought takeout on evenings when Zane was exhausted from work, and once surprised Emma by showing up at her school's art show when Zane was stuck at a job site. Yet there remained something mysterious about her. She took work calls in hushed tones, sometimes abruptly excused herself to respond to emails, and was vague about her office location. Zane noticed that she never invited them to her home, and while she mentioned colleagues and work challenges, she avoided specifics. None of that dampened the growing connection between them. Their first real kiss happened on his shabby couch after Emma had gone to bed, while a forgotten movie played in the background. Their hands had brushed reaching for popcorn, and the simple touch had ignited weeks of building tension. The kiss was tentative at first, then deepened with a hunger that surprised them both. "I've wanted to do that since the zoo," Gabrielle confessed breathlessly when they finally pulled apart. "I've wanted to do that since you had an asthma attack in the park," Zane admitted, making her laugh. As summer progressed, their relationship deepened. Gabrielle began staying for dinner most evenings she was free, helped Emma with her summer reading program, and even pitched in when Zane's ancient washing machine finally died, mysteriously producing the name of a repair person who fixed it for far less than a replacement would have cost. It was during a rare Saturday when Zane wasn't working that he began to put the pieces together. They were at a community fair, Emma running ahead to look at a face painting booth when a man in a business suit approached Gabrielle. "Miss Morgan," he exclaimed, looking surprised. "I didn't expect to see you here." Gabrielle tensed visibly. "Mr. Harrington, what a coincidence." The man glanced at Zane with poorly disguised curiosity. "I wanted to tell you the board was very impressed with your presentation yesterday. The proposed expansion is genius." "Thank you," Gabrielle said tightly. "I'll be in touch about next steps on Monday." After the man left, Zane raised an eyebrow. "Friend of yours." "Board member," Gabrielle said reluctantly. "From work." "Seems pretty impressed with you," Zane observed. "Just what kind of corporate management do you do?" Gabrielle sighed, watching Emma get a butterfly painted on her cheek. "It's complicated." "I'm a pretty smart guy," Zane said mildly. "Try me." She met his eyes, and for the first time, he saw genuine fear there. "I like what we have, Zane." "I like how you see me, how Emma sees me." Not as she broke off. "Not as what?" he pressed gently. Before she could answer, Emma bounded back, her face adorned with a colorful butterfly. "Look, Gabrielle, the lady said I look like a real fairy princess." The moment passed, but Zane's curiosity was piqued. That evening, after Gabrielle had gone home and Emma was asleep, he did something he'd never done before. He searched for Gabrielle Morgan online. The results made his stomach drop. Gabrielle Morgan, 31, CEO of Phoenix Innovations, a rapidly growing tech company specializing in sustainable energy solutions. Recent articles praised her visionary leadership, mentioned the company's impending expansion, and estimated its worth at over $2 billion. There were photos of Gabrielle in elegant business attire, speaking at conferences, accepting awards. She looked confident, powerful, a different person from the woman who laughed at Emma's jokes and helped him wash dishes in his tiny kitchen. Zane closed his laptop, his mind reeling. She hadn't just withheld information, she'd actively downplayed who she was. The thought stung more than he wanted to admit. When Gabrielle texted the next morning asking if she could come over that evening, Zane responded with a simple, "We need to talk." Her immediate, "I'll be there at 7, told him she understood what was coming. Emma was disappointed to learn she'd be spending the evening with Mrs. Patel next door, but the promise of her favorite movies and popcorn softened the blow. Gabrielle arrived precisely at 7, dressed simply in jeans and a blouse, her expression guarded. "You know, don't you?" she asked as soon as Zane closed the door behind her. "That you're the CEO of a billion-dollar company?" "Yeah, I figured it out," he said, gesturing for her to sit. "What I don't understand is why you kept it from me." Gabrielle sank onto the couch, her shoulders slumping. "At first, it was because I was just grateful to you for helping me, and I didn't want my position to complicate a simple thank you dinner." Then, when I got to know you and Emma." She looked up at him, her eyes vulnerable. "People treat me differently when they know who I am. They either want something from me or they're intimidated by me. With you and Emma, I was just Gabrielle." Zane remained standing, trying to process her explanation. "So you thought I would ask for money, try to take advantage of you?" "No," she said quickly. "Not intentionally, but it changes things, Zane. You can't tell me it doesn't." He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "What changes is that you didn't trust me enough to be honest. We've been seeing each other for almost 2 months. You've become important to Emma, to me." "And you've become important to me," Gabrielle insisted, rising to her feet. "More important than anyone has been in years. That's why I was afraid. My last relationship ended because he couldn't handle my success. He said he was fine with it until he wasn't, until his friends made comments about his sugar mama and his ego couldn't take it." Zane felt some of his anger deflate. "I'm not him." "I know that now," she said softly. "But I didn't want to risk losing what we were building. I was going to tell you soon, I promise." "Were you?" he challenged, "because it seems like you were pretty comfortable with the arrangement." Gabrielle paced the small living room. "It wasn't about comfort, it was about fear. For the first time in years, I met someone who saw me not my company, not my bank account, just me. Do you have any idea how rare that is? How precious?" Her words struck a chord. Zane had faced his own prejudices since becoming a single father, assumptions about his capabilities, his dedication to his job, his availability. People saw single dad before they saw him. "I understand wanting to be seen for who you are," he admitted, "but relationships need honesty, Gabrielle. Emma is already attached to you. He stopped, gathering his courage. "I'm falling in love with you, but I need to know I'm falling for the real you, not a carefully edited version." Gabrielle's eyes widened at his confession. "The woman you've been spending time with is the real me," she said earnestly. "The CEO, that's just my job. A big job, yes, with big responsibilities, but it's not who I am when I'm with you and Emma. That's the most authentic I've been in years." Zane closed the distance between them, taking her hands in his. "Then help me understand the whole you, because I want to, Gabrielle. I want to know everything, the corporate shark and the woman who knows random elephant facts and makes my daughter laugh." Tears glistened in her eyes. "I'm falling in love with you too," she whispered, "with both of you, and I'm terrified of messing it up." "Then don't," he said simply. "Be honest with me from now on, that's all I ask." She nodded, and he pulled her into his arms, feeling the tension gradually leave her body as she relaxed against him. That night marked a turning point. Over the next few weeks, Gabrielle opened up about her work, the pressure of leadership, the satisfaction of building something meaningful, the challenges of being a woman in a male-dominated industry. She showed Zane and Emma her sleek downtown apartment with its stunning city views, and introduced them to her world in careful, manageable pieces. In turn, Zane invited her deeper into their lives. She attended Emma's soccer games, helped with school projects, and became a fixture at their dinner table. When Emma had a nightmare, it was Gabrielle's name she called for alongside her father's. 4 months after their first meeting in the park, Zane invited Gabrielle to dinner at his apartment. She arrived to find the table set with candles, Emma conspicuously absent, and Zane more nervous than she'd ever seen him. "Where's Emma?" she asked, hanging up her coat. "Sleepover at her friend Lily's," Zane explained, taking her hand and leading her to the table. "I wanted tonight to be just us." The dinner was simple but perfect. Zane had prepared all her favorites, including a chocolate dessert that had her closing her eyes in bliss. "This is amazing," she said, savoring the last bite. "What's the occasion?" Zane took a deep breath. "The occasion is that I love you," he said, reaching across the table for her hand. "And Emma loves you, and I know this might seem fast, but when you know, you know." He slid from his chair and knelt beside her, producing a small velvet box from his pocket. "I can't offer you wealth or luxury," he said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "But I can offer you a home where you'll always be seen for exactly who you are, and loved completely for it. Gabrielle's free hand flew to her mouth as he opened the box, revealing a simple but elegant ring with a small diamond. "Gabrielle Morgan, will you marry me?" Tears spilled down her cheeks as she nodded vigorously, too overcome to speak. Finally, she managed, "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, she laughed through her tears. "I can't believe you bought this. It must have cost." "Don't," he said gently, rising to kiss her. "It's not about the money. It never has been." "No," she agreed, wrapping her arms around his neck. "It's about family. And you and Emma are mine now." Their wedding 6 months later was a simple affair in the same park where they'd first met. Emma served as flower girl, beaming with pride as she watched her father marry the woman who had become her friend, confidante, and second mother. In her vows, Gabrielle thanked Zane for seeing her when she couldn't breathe, both literally during her asthma attack and figuratively in the high-pressure world she inhabited. Zane promised to always be her safe harbor, the place where she could simply be Gabrielle, not CEO Morgan. Life after marriage brought adjustments for everyone. They bought a comfortable house halfway between Zane's work sites and Gabrielle's office, nothing ostentatious, but with enough room for Emma to have the backyard she'd always wanted and a dedicated space for Gabrielle to work from home when possible. Zane continued his construction career, though Gabrielle's connections helped him secure a partnership in a growing, contracting firm where his expertise was valued. Emma thrived with the stability of their blended family, proudly telling anyone who would listen that her stepmom runs a whole company but still has time to braid my hair. A year after their wedding, as they celebrated Emma's 8th birthday in their backyard, Gabrielle pulled Zane aside, her eyes dancing with excitement. "I have a present for you too," she whispered, placing his hand on her still flat stomach. "Due in January." Zane's face transformed with wonder. "Really, are you sure?" she nodded, laughing as he lifted her off her feet in a jubilant embrace. "Careful, CEO or not, I still get morning sickness." As they rejoined the birthday celebration, Emma immediately noticed their barely contained excitement. "What's the secret?" she demanded, hands on her hips in a pose remarkably similar to Gabrielle's boardroom stance. Exchanging glances, they decided there was no better time to share their news. When they told her she would be a big sister, Emma's squeal of delight was louder than all the party noise combined. Later that evening, with Emma finally asleep after the excitement, Zane and Gabrielle sat on their porch swing, his arm around her shoulders as they gazed at the stars. "Did you ever imagine this would be your life?" Gabrielle asked, nestling against him. "When you helped that woman having an asthma attack in the park," Zane smiled, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Not in my wildest dreams, but I wouldn't change a single moment of how we got here. Not even when you found out I'd been hiding my identity," she teased. "Especially not that," he said seriously, "because that's when I knew for sure." "Knew what?" "That you weren't falling for me because I was safe or convenient. You were falling for me despite all the reasons you shouldn't." Gabrielle placed his hand on her stomach again, both of them imagining the life growing within. "Best asthma attack I ever had," she murmured. As the stars twinkled above them and the future stretched out before them bright with promise, rich with love, Zane couldn't help but marvel at how a simple act of kindness had changed everything. The struggling single dad and the powerful CEO had found in each other exactly what they both needed most. Someone who saw them clearly, loved them completely, and helped them breathe.